In the 80s, there were two things I fell in love with, almost simultaneously. Simultaneously means at the same time for my friends who went to Los Angeles Unified School District. But two things that I fell in love with in the 80s. Hip-hop and wrestling.
And what you gonna do when Hulkamania and the largest arms in the world run wild on you?
Wrestling, man. WWF wrestling. Now, wrestling has always been a legit sport, going back several thousands of years, all over the world. From Japan, India. The Native Americans were staging wrestling events way before the first European settlers came to America. But what I want to discuss today is pro wrestling as we know it since the early 2000s, but I was all in it during the 80s and 90s. I'm talking all in it. Like I said, it was hip hop and WWF. Every Saturday morning, I would wait for WWF superstars to come on.
Next week on the Superstars of Wrestling, scheduled to join us in tag team action will be the mighty Twin Towers. And then from there, it's Hacksaw Jim Duggan will be here. Ravishing Rick Rude will join us. And then Brother Love and his guest, Brutus the Barber Beefcake.
And that all started during WrestleMania 2. Yeah, I'm old, guys. I go way back. What are they at, like WrestleMania 40 something now, maybe? I don't know, but I go way back to WrestleMania 2. That's where I have my first memories of wrestling as we know it. WWF, pro wrestling, wrestling entertainment, whatever they call it nowadays. Back then, we called it wrestling. Wrestling. They called it wrestling down south, but we called it wrestling. Know how I got a hold of this magazine? But I got a hold of a magazine. No, it wasn't an adult magazine. That came like a year later. I'm talking about a WWF magazine, and on it had Hulk Hogan versus King Kong Bundy. I remember like it was yesterday.
From behind that Bundy, where did he come from? Wham! King Kong Bundy to the rescue.
1985 it had to be then, if my memory serves me correct. But 1985, man, I had this magazine. That's all I knew about wrestling was this magazine I had.
Now on sale at your local newsstand, the new World Wrestling Federation magazine.
And then shortly after that, I found out, oh, this comes on Saturday mornings. So guess what I started to do? Every Saturday morning, I sat my butt down for a whole hour and watched wrestling. And I tried to consume anything I could when it came to pro wrestling. I would go to the supermarket. And you remember in the supermarket when they had all the magazines in one section? I mean, see, I know you kids don't really know what a magazine is nowadays, but that was our phone. Magazine. And I would sit at the magazine section while my mom would do her shopping. And I would read everything about wrestling. I knew nothing about it. There were all these other names from other different territories that I had no idea about, didn't know about, but I learned all of them while I was sitting there in the supermarket while my mom did her shopping. I was hooked, man. Fast forward about a year later, WrestleMania 3, my stepfather got us tickets to watch WrestleMania 3 in Los Angeles. But it wasn't the live event. It was on a big screen outside of, I believe, the LA Coliseum or something along those lines. Huge screen. And he took me to see WrestleMania 3, and I watched it on the screen. Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant. That was the one, man.
Look at this! He slammed it! I don't believe it!
And looking back, that was obviously an iconic match. A lot of behind the scenes went into even making that match happen. But at this time, I had no idea. I thought this was all, quote, real. Not saying it's fake, because I would never disrespect professional wrestlers like that, but I thought it was on the up, not knowing that there was some behind the scenes stuff and storylines. It was like a soap opera. Not knowing any of this.
Going into the match, I was sitting in the dressing room with Andre, and I was really worried, you know, because usually when I'm there, I know what the ending of the match is. You know, I know who's going to win or lose, but Andre was really stubborn, and he always played head games with me.
Don't get it twisted. Just because these guys were doing a soap opera doesn't mean they were not putting their bodies through hell. And they were putting their bodies through literal hell every single night all over the country for our amusement.
Everything hurts, like, just like, it's hard to explain. Like, if I'm going to brush my teeth and I'm leaning on the counter brushing my teeth, I can't push away. So when I'm done brushing my teeth, I have to lean in like that and then pull back. You know, I can't push like a glass door open. Everything in the gym is short strokes. You know, I can't straighten my arms out.
Yeah.
And then it's the same with my knees, my hips, my back, my neck. You know, but that's because I probably wrestled too long, and I didn't get the memo that stuff was fake.
And at this time, I knew nothing about the beginnings of wrestling and how wrestling started as we know it today. But it goes way back, man. It goes way back to the circuses, the traveling circus. See, what they would do is, you know, they had the circus, right? They had the bearded lady. They had the, I don't know, the three-armed guy, whatever they had. Seven-eyed pig, whatever they had. But one of the most popular attractions at a circus back in the day, when it came to town, was wrestling. And what would happen is a shooter, a person who is a really good wrestler, really good, like could put you in a pretzel and twist you up and all that, he would pick a guy out in the audience, you know, or someone would say, hey, they would say, hey, pick your toughest guy and I'll beat him. So then you had the toughest guy in the city that they were in, the little town that they were in. And this toughest guy would go in the ring thinking he could beat up this wrestler. And this was all, a lot of the stuff behind the scenes was all planned to get this guy even in the ring. And once he got him in the ring, the shooter, the guy who was the good wrestler, would wrap dude up like a Twizzler. And that's how the word spread. Oh, that's really cool. Oh, that's really cool. That's really cool. And wrestling spread through all the little towns, through the South, Midwest, North, all the way to the West Coast. The traveling circus was basically the way that pro wrestling spread across the country. Pro wrestling as we know it today. But man, what an interesting time that was, because what these guys would eventually end up doing, these wrestlers, is they would wrestle if there were 365 days in a year, they're wrestling 365 times, sometime twice on Sunday, putting their bodies through hell. And if they got sick one night or they got hurt one night, guess what? They still had to wrestle. If they didn't wrestle, they didn't get paid. There was no union, none of that. But wrestling had its ups and downs when it comes to ticket sales and things like that. Word got out a lot that back in the 40s and 50s that the matches were not on the level, meaning they weren't real matches, real fights. The winners were predetermined. But there was still that fascination with wrestling, like, is it real? Is it not? So it continued to grow and grow and grow and grow. Black wrestlers, white wrestlers, Native American wrestlers, people pretending to be Native American wrestlers, German wrestlers, people pretending to be German wrestlers. They all would travel the country and entertain the crowd. There was a lot of unfortunate racism in wrestling at the beginning. So a lot of black wrestlers were not able to wrestle white people, white wrestlers. That all changed when a man named Sputnik Monroe said, nah, man, we're going to change that. Look up the Sputnik Monroe story.
Black people back in those days, this is back in the 60s, they were required to watch wrestling. They had to go upstairs. They couldn't come on the main floor. And the funny thing about Sputnik was he was a baby face to the black people. They loved him.
Such a very, very interesting story. I think it was in the 50s. But see, what happened was back in the day, guys, whenever there was a wrestling event, the white folks got the best seats up in the house, obviously, and the black folks had to sit in the balcony sections, like way at the balcony sections, to where they can barely see what was going on in the ring. Sputnik Monroe was one of the first guys who said, nah, man, the black people should be able to sit right next to the white folks, and black wrestlers should be able to wrestle white wrestlers and make just as much money as the white wrestlers are making.
He finally told the promoter of Memphis, if my people, not my black people, but if my people are not welcome on the bottom floor in Ellis, he says, I'll never wrestle here again.
They need to do a documentary or a Lifetime movie on Sputnik Monroe. Very, very interesting story. I encourage all of you guys to go down that rabbit hole if you are a true wrestling nerd or historian like I am. A lot of you guys watching this right now, you probably already know about Sputnik Monroe. But if you don't, check dude out. But yeah, man, even going down south, I mean, the racism in wrestling was real, especially down south, where they didn't like those N-words, boy. And once again, there was still that thing where the fans didn't know, is it real? Is it fake? So the black guy comes in the ring, and usually he was the heel. Now, for my friends who are not familiar with wrestling jargon, a heel means a bad guy. The black guy would usually be the heel, and he would say stuff to rile up the crowd, get the crowd all excited, mad, upset, start throwing stuff in the ring. And a lot of these guys were getting shanked. They were getting popped at. They were getting physically assaulted, jumped, just so they can make maybe $10, $15, $20 a night. Now, going back to heel. When I said heel, heel is a bad guy in wrestling. Babyface is a good guy. All of these words were words that are called kayfabe. And kayfabe started out in the circuses. They have that circus jargon. There was that circus talk to let the workers, the people who worked for the circus, be able to communicate without letting the outside crowd know what's going on. The outside crowd were known as marks. That's where the whole word mark comes from. A la Boys in the Hood when he pulls up on him. Haha, mark. It means someone who is an easy target. That guy right there looks like a good mark. Let's bring him in the ring. Maybe we can get him to be into wrestling. Spread the word that, oh my God, this thing is really real. But yeah, so it must have been a cool time. I would have loved to get to experience it just for a little while. But the bassism, I gotta be careful with the word I use. For whatever reason, YouTube hates that word, the bassism, but starts with an R. The bassism was heavy back then, especially down south. And not only black wrestlers were getting assaulted, I mean, wrestlers, period, were getting assaulted. The bad guy was getting assaulted. They were whooping dudes' butts, or trying to whoop dudes' butts. But that was one thing. If you were going to be a wrestler, if you were going to enter that ring, the promoter trusted that you could protect yourself and you could keep the secret that wrestling is a work. Wrestling is not on the up. The matches are predetermined. There are wrestlers, and most wrestlers back then, who couldn't even tell their wives the truth. couldn't even tell their kids the truth. A lot of people didn't even know that their fathers and grandfathers and things like that were involved in this work until the internet came about. Or until later on when people started doing interviews and saying, yeah, I mean, that was predetermined, this was predetermined. But never fake. Never fake. These guys put their bodies through a lot. And in the 80s, there were a lot of newscasters. There were a lot of, when the wrestling was at its peak, it was in the 80s, man. Like Hulk Hogan took it to a whole other level. So that's when exposés were done on wrestling. That's when certain documentaries were made on wrestling, claiming that wrestling is, quote, fake. There's a really good couple of situations from the 80s where it didn't go too well for the people who were saying that wrestling is fake. One of them was Richard Belzer, who had on Hulk Hogan and Mr. T at one time.
Now, the first thing you need to know about amateur wrestling or professional wrestling or submission holds, you just tell me, brother, when you want him to quit squealing, okay?
All right. Because he's all right. He's just sleeping. He's sleeping. Really, I was a sleeper hole. He'll be all right. He's waking up now. That was a serious
right,
move. A lot of people.
See, it works.
Yeah, Richard found out the hard way that you probably shouldn't refer to wrestling or as fake or even try to tempt these guys into proving to you that it's not fake.
We had a very ugly incident here last week on the show. Hulk Hogan and Ms. T were here, and Hulk Hogan did a demonstration, and he hurt me real bad. I split my head open, and I was knocked unconscious and so on.
Another situation was, his name was John Stossel, and he was doing a, quote, expose on wrestling, and one day he decides to go into the WWF locker room and tell Dr. Death Steve, was it Dr. Death? See, I'm getting a little older, guys. I think it was Dr. Death. I can't remember who it was. Whoever it was, he said, I believe wrestling's fake. And boom! Dude hit him right on the side of the cheek. Boom! Hit him on the other side of the cheek. And said, you still think it's fake?
I ask Schultz questions that I assume all wrestlers have been asked dozens of times.
What? Is this a good business?
Yeah, it's a good business. I wouldn't be in it if it wasn't.
Why is it a good business?
Because only the tough survive. That's the reason you ain't in it. And this punk holding the camera reading he ain't in it. Reading these rednecks out here ain't in it. Because it's a tough business.
That's terrific.
What? Is that all you got?
I'll ask you the standard question. You know?
Standard question.
I think this is fake.
You think it's... What's that? Is that fake? Huh? What the hell's wrong with you? That's open hand slap, huh? You think it's... Huh? What do you mean?
Richard Belzer and John Stossel ended up suing the WWF for millions. Stossel, I do believe, ended up going deaf in his ears or losing or having permanent ear damage or something like that due to those slaps. They were really hard. I can't play that one on YouTube because, well, YouTube, unfortunately, will probably flag that. And I don't want to even go there. But if you get a chance, look at, just type in WWF Wrestling Fake 1980s. And I think it was John Stossel. Boom! And just watch him get smacked into next Thursday. Wrestling is definitely a soap opera, and that was part of its appeal. That was one of the things I enjoyed as a kid, were the storylines. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat versus Jake the Snake Roberts and their little beef. Brutus the Barber Beefcake versus Adrian Adonis. Haircut match. I mean, Hulk Hogan versus Macho Man Randy Savage. The mega powers exploding. I mean, come on. Macho Man Randy Savage, one of my favorite wrestlers. Bret Hart, one of my favorite wrestlers. Who are some other ones that I really like? The Dynamite Kid was amazing. Amazing wrestler. I love the Ultimate Warrior. I mean, geez, there were so many good wrestlers, and I liked a lot of the bad guys just as much as I liked the good guys. As a matter of fact, my first wrestling toy as a kid was of the Iron Sheik. I didn't even want the Hulk Hogan one. I didn't even like Hulk Hogan. I was not a big Hulk Hogan fan.
With Wrestling Superstar, it's like having a real match right in your own home. There's Jimmy Superfly Snuka, the Iron Sheik, Hulk Hogan, and Big John Studd.
My first toys were the Iron Sheik and Hulk Hogan. And guess who always won? Guess who always won in my world, in my little ring that I got? Oh, Iron Sheik was always smashing on Hogan. I was like, get out of here, Hogan. I was not a big fan. I kind of saw Hogan as corny. Obviously, as I got older, I understood the importance of Hulk Hogan and just how important he was and is to the sport of professional wrestling. So I can't hate on that at all. Dude is a legend. And he is one of the reasons why wrestling flourished. I mean, wrestling was a done deal. Not a done deal, but it wasn't drawing seats like it was when Hulk Hogan first came in. Hulk Hogan was everywhere. He became an overnight superstar. He had merchandise. He was tearing off his shirt. He was in cartoons. The WWF had a cartoon. That's how popular it was back then. You guys remember the WWF cartoon? It had Junkyard Dog. Tito Santana was in it. Nikolai Volkov. And speaking of all those names, what Vince McMahon, you guys know the name Vince McMahon. He's now infamous Vince McMahon after that documentary that came out about a year ago. But Vince McMahon, what he did is he changed the game during the 80s. See, before that, there was an unwritten rule that promoters worked in their own territory. What I meant by territory is California had a territory. The Mid-South had a territory. Florida had its own territory. The Northeast had its own territory. Minnesota had its own territory. San Francisco had its own territory. Portland had its own territory. Hawaii had its own territory. You getting the point of it? And there was an agreement between all the promoters that you would stick to your territory. You would not venture out into another territory. Well, Vince McMahon was like, well, I'm not going to just chill here and only make money in the Northeast. No. So Vince McMahon ended up breaking that. He ended up breaking that, and he ended up going into other people's territories because he knew he had a better product. He knew he had, quote, more entertaining wrestlers. Vince wanted to take this thing worldwide, so what he would do is he would literally just snatch up all of the wrestlers from different territories. Snatch them up. The best wrestlers from different territories. And what would happen is he would go right back into that territory with the wrestler who used to be in that old territory. Say, look, Junkyard Dog is now with me. Come check out my show. Huh? Jake the Snake is now with me. Come check out my show. Superstar Billy Graham is still with me, is now with me. Come check out my show. And he went into these other territories and just erased history and just erased everything that all the promoters had agreed upon over the past decades, probably 100 years almost. Circuses were the same thing. You stick to your town, I'll go over here, we're not going to intermingle. That's where all of that started. But Vince McMahon changed the game with that, and at the end of the day, it pretty much worked out. It pretty much worked out. I remember watching wrestling, and I was a big WWF guy, but But I would get WCW on cable, right? And Atlanta had a Superstation or something, and I would also see WCCW. So I knew there were other. I didn't know they were called territories at the time, but I knew there were other wrestling organizations out there. But me being naive and not really understanding the business, I pretty much thought that they were fake wrestling. I know that sounds crazy. Once again, ignorant. I'm not understanding the business. I thought that was seen as fake wrestling. Now knowing what I know, a lot of those wrestlers could whoop the WWE wrestlers behind the scenes in a real fist fight any day. But I didn't know that. I just saw WCW. I was like, man, that's fake wrestling. I saw WCW, man, that's fake wrestling. WWE, WWF is real wrestling. That's what I was looking at. But once again, ignorant guy. But WWF was everything, man. Saturdays, sometimes Sundays it would come on. And I was all in. I was all into WWF. From the early 80s up until the mid to late 90s when WCW started smashing on WWF. WCW started smashing on them in the ratings because the WWF, their product, it got a little stale. It got a little boring, to be honest. Corny characters, same old storylines. It got really boring. WCW ended up snatching Hulk Hogan from the WWF, which was huge, and they decided on a brilliant move to get the crowd excited again and to get wrestling exciting again. They decided to make Hulk Hogan, that's right, brother, Mr. Yellow and Red, positive, say your prayers, eat your vitamins, kids. Mr. Hulk Hogan, they changed him to a bad guy. They turned the Hulkster into a bad guy. And to this day, that was one of the biggest moves in WCW history. Fans started throwing stuff in the ring. They were generally upset that Hulk Hogan had, for lack of better words, betrayed them.
I never think about what I'm going to say until I get out there.
Yeah.
So, everything was really cool, and all of a sudden I felt that cold white heat where it got silent for a minute, and they started throwing stuff. I told me and Gene, I said, you need to go, bro. You need to get out of the ring because we may have a riot here. And then his nose was bleeding. He got hit with something, and he kept his head down. He was scared. I said, bro, you need to run. Because if we start lighting this place up, we could have a riot here. Because it was that type of heat I hadn't felt for a long time.
Keep in mind, guys, this was still one of those times that it was still teetering on that time where people believed this stuff. It was real. People had invested their time, their energy, their emotions into wrestling. And here is Hulk Hogan, the great American hero. I am a real American, fight for the rights of every man. I am a real American. Hulk Hogan giving the big booyah to the wrestling world and turning bad, man. Hence the NWO, New World Order. And the New World Order in WCW changed everything until it got corny, until it became a joke. They had NWO Wolfpack, NWO Red, NWO like Hispanic. They had like all these NWOs, and it was just like, okay, now we're milking a bad thing. It started out real good, but now it's a bad thing. So WCW, they sank in the ratings. Their ratings tanked eventually after they pushed NWO to its limits and it just wasn't good anymore. And WCW, the only rival company to WWF, decided they were gonna bounce from the wrestling scene, and they sold WCW to WWF. And that's when I pretty much checked out. Yeah, I pretty much checked out. This was the early 2000s. Pretty much checked out. Because wrestling to me, it just didn't, when there's no competition, there's no reason to be good. Right? What's the reason to be good if you're the only game in town? See, when there's competition, it forces you to be better, them to be better. It forces... Competition helps out the consumer. It helps out the fan. So when there's no competition, it was like, okay, wrestling is whack now. And that's pretty much when I left. When Vince McMahon and WWF bought WCW, and then WCW wrestlers started showing up in WWF. And I was just like, okay, I'm good. I'm good. No, thank you. No more for me. And it was the end of an era, man. It was the end of an era that I really enjoyed. It was something that, oh man, it was like losing a part of me when I stopped watching wrestling, man. Keep in mind, I've been watching this since I was like, what, 7, 8 years old? What was 85, 7 years old? And now here we are in what, 2000, 2001, where I'm like, okay, I think I'm a gracefully bow out. But wrestling continued. WWF continued to flourish, and they found a whole new breed of fan, and the kids still watch it. They became more kid-friendly. And they continued to go and go and go up until just recently when they decided to sell to the organization that owns the UFC. Now the UFC and the WWF are owned by the same company. I don't know how that's going to go. I'm not invested in any of that. I just still keep my ears to the wrestling streets and still check it out every once in a while and see what's going on behind the scenes. But that's about all I know about that. All I know is Vince McMahon, his legacy now, after that documentary I seen about a year or so ago. Man, what's up with that Vince McMahon, his mustache? Last time I saw him, he had that weird mustache. He's looking like Ricky Ricardo on some weird shit. But Vince McMahon, the man who took WWF to the heights, took WWE to the heights, now he's being accused of all kinds of craziness. Really sucks, man. But comment down below. What do you guys think? Did you watch wrestling? Did you watch WWF? Did you watch WCW? Did you watch Mid-South? Did you watch Florida? Did you watch the Portland territory? Did you watch Hawaii when you were growing up? Because once again, all parts of the country had different wrestling territories. So I'm curious, what were you watching as a kid? And mainly I'm talking about people in 30s and 40s and 50s and up, right? What wrestling did you watch as a kid? Who were some of your favorite wrestlers? Comment down below. And please hit that like button if you have not already. Please go on and smash that like button for your boy. It lets the algorithm know that I even exist. It lets the world know that I am here. And it really helps out the channel. Please also hit that subscribe button if this is your first time joining the channel and you enjoy what you hear. I would appreciate you hitting that subscribe button. Also, subscribe to my second channel right here on YouTube, Dusty Vision Radio. I post completely different content over there than I do here on my main channel. But please subscribe to Dusty Vision Radio on YouTube. I'm also on Rumble. That's right. Are you guys familiar with Rumble? If you're not, download the Rumble app and subscribe to Dusty Vision TV. All one word, Dusty Vision TV. I'm also on Instagram, Dusty Vision Radio on Instagram. And if you're one of those old fogies like myself and you're still on Facebook, subscribe to your boy on Facebook. Follow me on Facebook. I have a group over there where I post stuff often. And I do appreciate you guys, man. I'm going to get the heck out of here. You guys be safe. I'll talk to you soon. Peace.